All right, here's what I have to say in my commentary right there. This is the second installment in an ongoing study into the subject of the nature of the one true God, with an emphasis on the incarnation of Yeshua as fully God and yet fully man. Attempts at understanding the hypostatic nature of God and Yeshua forces one to rely on a fair amount of philosophizing along the way, which is what I admit to. But one should never lose sight of the fact that the Bible is not so much a book of philosophy as it is a book about the revelation of God, His Messiah, His Spirit, and His covenanted people. Amen? Amen. Let's continue. Many Christians, I'm right here, many Christians, both historical and contemporary, often express a convictional belief in the Trinity of the Bible without being able to logically comprehend or understand the full scope of the Trinity as a whole. And this is understandable, right? Indeed, I say in my commentary, I'm right here, without the additional benefit of professional training in analytic logic or philosophy, a layman's level understanding of the Bible and its God is perfectly fine to accomplish the goal of Messiah in bringing about what I mentioned earlier, the genuine personal salvation of an individual. Correct? Am I correct there? As mentioned briefly in part 1 to this commentary, which again is just right above here, as mentioned briefly in part 1, and which will be articulated later on in this part 2, there's every good reason to consider and appeal to the triune nature of God as a mystery, an admirable approach to the topic, since it's easily understandable from Isaiah 55:8 that, quote, "As high as the sky is above the earth, are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts," end quote. That's David Stern's rendering of Isaiah 55:8. God's ways are above our ways. God's thoughts are above our thoughts. So it's understandable that when we're talking about the triune nature of God and this investigation into ontology, that there's no way that we are going to be able to fully grasp and even articulate the nature of God. It's understandable that we're simply going to have to use words like mystery when it comes to trying to explain who and what God is in relationship to the way the Bible presents Him. Indeed, commenting on Hebraic thought versus Greek thought, also see my part 1 of this commentary, and within the scope of attempting to unravel the ontological nature of God and Christology, Messianic author Tim Hegg has aptly noted, listen up, this is a quote from Tim Hegg. Tim Hegg has this to say about our approach to investigating what the Bible has to say about God, and should we take a philosophical approach? Should we take the Greek approach? Should we take the Hebraic approach? Let me just kind of back up before I quote Hegg and just tell you up front, I don't think there's an either-or answer going on here. I don't think that the Greek approach is wrong per se, and I don't think the Hebrew approach is perhaps the most right approach. But what we do have to recognize is that historically speaking, as Hegg is going to highlight, the Bible was written by Hebrews, and therefore the language that's applied by the Bible is more readily accessible and understandable to the Hebraic worldview. And therefore, if we take the Bible and pass it under the microscope of a Greco philosophical examination, so we pass it under that lens, we kind of overlay a philosophical grid on top of it, which is highly analytical and maybe what we might call using logical formulations and things like that. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, because God created our hearts and our minds as well, and we are to love Him with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. So there's nothing inherently wrong with appreciating the technicalities of the Bible from a logical perspective, from a philosophical and analytical approach. However, in the end, when all is said and done, there are necessarily going to be limits to the philosophical approach to investigating the nature of God, because the Bible itself was not written using that particular perspective. So that's what Hegg's going to be getting at. So let me just read Hegg's answer.